Okay, so we're diving into psychedelics this time.
Okay.
But, everybody's talking about all the healing and all this great stuff and all the potential.
Right.
But what about the risks?
Yeah,
What about all the stuff that could go wrong?
definitely.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today, are the risks associated with psychedelics.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be talking about some pretty heavy stuff like psychosis and ego death and bad trips and all that.
Yes. All the things that people kind of...
Yeah, all the things that people don't really talk about as much.
Right, exactly.
So it's important to be informed.
Yeah.
So let's...
Before you even consider dipping a toe in, it's important to understand...
That's kind of... It's like anything else, right?
Yeah.
It's powerful stuff.
It is powerful.
And, fire can either cook your food or burn down your house, so we need to know how to handle this responsibly.
Yeah, and I think it's important to distinguish these risks from just having a rough time.
Right.
We're talking about distinct psychological states.
Yeah.
It can be really intense, even traumatic for some.
Yeah, so let's define some of these terms.
Okay.
When we say psychosis,
Yeah.
when we say ego death, when we say bad trip, what exactly do we mean?
Right, so let's start with psychosis.
Okay.
Psychosis is essentially feeling detached from reality. You might experience hallucinations, delusions, have trouble thinking clearly.
So like thinking you can fly or the trees are talking to you?
Yeah, that kind of break.
The kind of break from reality.
From reality, yeah. And in severe cases, it can be incredibly distressing and really debilitating.
So how does this relate to psychedelics?
Right. Well, the link between psychedelics and psychosis is really complex and still debated.
Okay.
It's not as simple as saying that psychedelics directly cause psychosis.
Okay. So it's not like a guaranteed outcome.
No, not at all.
Oh.
Research suggests that folks with pre-existing mental health conditions, especially those with a family history of psychosis, might be more vulnerable.
So if you have any family history or personal history of mental health challenges, that's something to really consider.
Absolutely. You want to be extra mindful of that.
Okay.
And then we get to ego dissolution.
Okay.
Now, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
So ego dissolution is this feeling of your sense of self dissolving. Like the boundaries between you and the world are blurring.
So like you're merging with the universe, becoming one with everything.
Exactly. And for some people, that can be incredibly profound and liberating.
Yeah.
But for others, it can be absolutely terrifying if they're not prepared.
Right. Like you're dying.
Yeah, imagine feeling like you're dying.
Right.
Ceasing to exist as an individual.
Losing all control.
It can trigger this primal fear, like being sucked into a void.
Wow, that sounds really intense. And I know in your research, you've come across a lot of firsthand accounts of this.
Yes, there are documented cases where people have had these really challenging ego dissolution experiences that have led to lasting distress.
Okay.
They describe this feeling of existential dread, like their entire reality is unraveling.
So it sounds like preparation and mindset is just absolutely crucial.
It's essential. You don't want to just jump into this without understanding what you might be getting into.
Absolutely.
And then we have bad trips, which are often characterized by intense fear, paranoia, anxiety, and this feeling of losing control.
So more than just having a bad time.
Exactly. It can really shake you up.
Okay.
Think disturbing hallucinations.
Right.
Emotional turmoil. It can be incredibly unsettling.
And some people have even described these bad trips as lasting a really long time.
Yes, that's right.
Like way beyond just the immediate effects of whatever substance they were taking.
Way beyond the immediate effects. There are cases where these psychological effects linger for days, weeks, even longer.
Wow.
Impacting daily life and well-being.
So we've got these three major categories of risk. Psychosis, ego dissolution, and bad trips.
Right.
Are they all equally likely?
That's a great question.
What does science say?
And that's what we're going to dive into next.
Okay.
We're going to unpack the research, debunk some myths, and start talking about how you can minimize these risks.
Perfect.
If you're thinking about exploring psychedelics.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything, we hear about through the grapevine. There are tons of myths and misconceptions floating around about psychedelics, especially when it comes to understanding the real risks.
Yeah, it's like that game of telephone we played as kids. By the end of it, the story's totally different.
Right.
I remember hearing about, LSD being laced with strychnine.
Oh, yeah.
All this, like, really scary stuff.
Yeah.
And it turns out that that was just a total myth.
Exactly.
Debunked by the DEA.
Yeah, fear and sensationalism can really distort the facts.
Right.
So let's ground ourselves in the research, starting with one of the most critical factors,
Okay.
set and setting.
Okay, set and setting, it sounds a little more like a meditation retreat
Right.
than a scientific principle.
Well, there's a reason why it's emphasized so heavily.
Okay.
So set refers to your internal state going into the experience. So your mindset, your expectations, your emotional state.
Okay.
And setting is the external environment.
Okay.
The physical space, the people around you, the overall vibe.
So, like, if you're listening to music in a peaceful park
Exactly.
versus, like, a crowded subway.
Yeah.
Same music, totally different experience.
Exactly. A great analogy.
Right.
Research consistently shows that set and setting play a huge role in shaping the direction of a psychedelic experience.
Okay.
A comfortable, supportive setting and a positive, prepared mindset can significantly reduce the chances of having a difficult time.
So it's not just about the drug itself,
It's not just about the substance.
but the context.
The context is key.
That must be why having a guide is so important. Having somebody there who can
Absolutely.
kind of steer the ship a little bit.
Yeah, a guide or a trained facilitator can provide that support and guidance throughout the experience.
Right.
Help you navigate any challenging emotions or difficult moments that might come up.
What about dosage?
Dosage is crucial.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really important.
So, like, research studies,
Yeah.
they'll use really high doses, but that's in a very controlled setting.
In very controlled environments, often with medical professionals present.
Right.
And that's totally different from recreational use where people might be experimenting
Right, right.
with unknown doses or mixing substances.
And then you've got microdosing,
Right.
which is kind of a different,
Whole other ballgame.
yeah.
Yeah, so microdosing involves taking these sub-perceptual amounts. So tiny, you don't experience the full-blown psychedelic effects.
Right.
While people report subtle benefits. Okay.
There's still limited research on the long-term effects and potential risks of microdosing.
So even though it's a really small amount,
It doesn't necessarily mean it's risk-free.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And then the big question
Yes.
of long-term effects.
Yes, flashbacks.
Flashbacks.
This is something people often worry about.
Right, yeah.
That idea of suddenly getting thrown back into a bad trip,
Right, months, even years later.
months or even years later, is that a real thing or is it Hollywood?
Right?
So, flashbacks, or what's clinically known as hallucinogen persisting perception disorder,
Okay.
it can happen, but it's actually pretty rare,
Okay.
especially for those who use psychedelics in control settings.
Okay.
And they're usually brief,
Okay.
not super distressing, more like fleeting visual distortions.
Gotcha. So not like the horror movie scene.
Not the horror movies you know.
Okay.
What research does indicate
Right.
is that negative long-term consequences are less common in well-managed therapeutic settings.
Okay.
So when psychedelics are used responsibly,
With proper preparation and integration, the risks are significantly reduced.
that's reassuring to know.
It is good.
So we've gotten a much clearer picture
We have.
of the science. We've debunked some myths.
Yes.
Let's get practical for a second.
Okay.
So if someone's listening and they're thinking, okay, this is all really fascinating,
Yeah.
but I'm really considering trying this,
Right.
what advice would you give them?
I would say the most important thing is to approach it with informed caution.
Okay.
Do your research.
Okay.
Learn about the specific substance, its effects, potential risks, any contraindications with medications or pre-existing health conditions.
So it's not a decision to be made lightly.
It's not a decision to be made lightly.
It's kind of like skydiving.
I love that.
You wouldn't just jump out of a plane without any training
Exactly.
or a parachute.
Preparation is key.
So you got to respect the power of this stuff.
Yes, you got to respect the power of these substances.
Right.
Prepare yourself properly.
And speaking of preparation,
Yes, start low and slow.
and slow.
Dip your toe in the water
Exactly.
before you cannonball.
Right. Begin with a very small dose to see how you respond. Avoid being overwhelmed.
Okay, and we talked about this earlier.
Yes.
Set and setting.
We did.
That's super important.
Super important. You want to create a safe, supportive environment,
And not a party.
ideally with a trusted guide or sitter.
Right, more like a peaceful sanctuary.
Avoid anything that could trigger anxiety or fear.
Gotcha.
Think of it as curating the perfect environment
Okay.
for a meaningful experience.
And intention setting.
Yes.
So, why are you doing this?
So
What are you
you're-
hoping to get out of it?
Yeah, reflect on why you want to use psychedelics, what are you hoping to gain. Setting clear intentions can really help guide your journey.
Okay.
And increase the likelihood of a positive outcome.
Okay, so research.
Yes.
Start low and slow.
Yes.
Set and setting intentions.
You got it.
That's a really good toolkit
It is.
to start with.
Yeah. But there's another layer to this whole conversation, isn't there?
There is.
You know, people are having these transformative, even spiritual experiences.
Yeah,
What does that tell us about consciousness?
that's a great question.
About who we are? Yeah, it's like opening a door to another level.
Yeah.
We're just kind of like peeking through.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating is that these experiences aren't just fleeting highs.
Right.
You know, research suggests that they can actually lead to lasting changes.
Right, like quantum change.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like a sudden, like, enduring shift
Right, exactly.
after some kind of mystical experience.
Yeah, they describe changes in values, increased compassion, even a decreased fear of death.
Wow.
It's like these experiences can rewire the brain in a really fundamental way.
Makes you wonder if we're tapping into something much deeper than we normally would.
It really does.
Like, are we getting a glimpse of some fundamental truth about reality?
Yeah, are we seeing the interconnectedness of everything?
Right, whoa, now we're getting pretty deep.
I know, that's what makes this feel so captivating, right?
Right.
Psychedelics, they're not just about getting high, they're a tool for exploring consciousness, understanding the human mind.
It's like we've been looking out at space for so long
Yes.
with telescopes, and now we're turning the telescope inward.
I love that image.
Right.
And, you know, as we delve deeper into this inner space, it raises questions about ethics and responsibility.
Right, because it's not just a fringe topic anymore.
It's not.
It's like research is being revived.
Yeah.
We're seeing all this legalization and decriminalization.
Exactly, and it's entering mainstream conversations.
Right.
And that raises questions about how do we navigate this responsibly?
Right. How do we make sure that people aren't being exploited?
Yes.
How do we honor, the history of these substances?
Especially the indigenous cultures
Yeah.
that have used them for spiritual and healing purposes for centuries.
It's like finding some ancient artifact.
Yes.
You got to be careful with it,
We got to approach it with respect and understanding.
not just exploit it.
Yeah, we need to be mindful of the potential for harm,
Right. Especially as it's getting more popular.
especially as it becomes more popular. You know, we don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past where these substances were demonized
Right.
and driven underground because of misinformation and fear.
And there's the risk of commercialization
Absolutely.
where, it's like,
As the demand increases,
Yeah.
the potential for these substances to be marketed as quick fixes or miracle cures,
right.
which could lead people to use them without proper preparation.
Right. Or understanding the risks.
Or understanding the risks,
Yeah,
exactly.
you got to emphasize that these are powerful tools,
They are.
not toys.
Not toys. Treat them with respect
Right.
and caution.
It's like fire,
Yes.
electricity.
It's like nuclear energy.
Yeah.
Incredibly beneficial when harnessed responsibly, but potentially destructive if misused.
Okay, so these are the conversations we need to be having.
Absolutely.
As a society.
As psychedelics become more integrated into our culture,
Yeah.
we need to talk about ethics, responsibility, access.
How to balance this
Yes.
individual exploration
Exactly.
with, the need for safety.
Yeah. Finding that balance
Yeah.
is key.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We did.
We talked about the risks. We talked about the science.
We talked about practical tips.
Gave people a toolkit.
Yes. And also touched upon those broader societal implications
Yeah.
of this psychedelic renaissance.
And hopefully
Yeah.
we gave our listeners a balanced perspective.
I think so.
We didn't tell you what to think.
We just gave you the information.
Yeah. Gave you the tools to make your own decision.
Right, because ultimately the decision to explore psychedelics is a personal one.
Absolutely.
But it's a decision that should be made with careful consideration,
Yes.
thorough research,
Yeah.
and a healthy dose of self-awareness.
And like with anything,
Yes.
critical thinking is crucial.
Absolutely.
Question what you hear. Do your research.
Find those reliable sources.
Right.
Engage in open and honest dialogue.
So if this deep dive has piqued your interest,
Yeah.
we encourage you to keep exploring.
Keep reading, keep researching.
Yeah, listen to different perspectives.
Talk to people.
Reflect on what resonates with you.
Exactly.
And as always,
Yes,
we love to hear from you guys.
we do.
Reach out to us on our website, social media.
Keep the conversation going.
Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time,
Yes.
keep diving deep.